So we decided recently that we would do something sort of interactive with our followers and fans. We're always getting questions, we're always getting comments on things, so we figured we're gonna create a monthly Q&A. I'm gonna try to do this impromptu. There's no cue cards, and we're literally just gonna go from your questions off Instagram, and here we go. Hope you guys enjoy. First question, why do you love Lamborghini? So I would say that beyond my DNA and sort of beyond the fact that I was raised around Lamborghinis and I was probably brainwashed to like Miras and Countaches and Diablos, I really do feel that the brand is undervalued and it's so exciting. I mean, this day when I watched the 60 Minutes special with Morley Safer and Valentino's driving a Countach, and you have a guy, Daniele Audetto in marketing, talking about the Countach of that period and talking about the people that made those cars. I mean, this was a brand that was so bold. They didn't give a shit about financial restraints. They didn't care about practicality. I mean, truly, the Countach was an ostentatious, it was a radical car for a rock star, a celebrity, a playboy, and that's what that car represents. And I think if you look at the modern hypercars today, they have all sort of followed that path. I mean, they've taken that sort of perfect formula of the Countach, which is imperfect in many ways, but the perfect formula, and they've molded it into the hypercar today. So that's why I love Lamborghini. They're bold, they're exciting, and they're completely insane. So let's see, what is the next one? I've got some stupid questions here. What is the biggest day-to-day struggle for Curated? I have to sort of answer this, I would say, as my own personal struggle. I'm a eternal perfectionist, so it bothers me when a car has an issue, or it really bothers me if something's not correct on a car. And I would say the biggest struggle is that these cars are temperamental, they're older cars, and many times you want to set expectations with clients and you want clients happy, but things break, parts are delayed, you can't find parts, and you're managing these expectations. So every car has almost become a project. I mean, a blinker switch might take months to find. We recently had a Mura from a client, and his fuel gauge wasn't working, and we realized it was the fuel sending unit that's in the fuel tank. Well, it was a very, very early Mura, so guess what? The current part that you could buy from Lamborghini is for the later cars. It doesn't work on the earlier cars, so we actually had to find someone to rebuild the original fuel sending unit. So, explaining that to a client can sometimes be difficult. I'm a people pleaser. I love to see people happy, so sometimes it's managing expectations of a temperamental asset and an asset that could be 30, 40 years old. So that's probably the biggest day-to-day struggle. I would say the other struggle is finding great inventory. It's not the easiest thing in the world, and we're constantly having to be creative to find really high quality cars. As time goes on, we've seen historically the market, prices get higher. And these cars, if they've been in an owner's hands for 20 years, they're not transacting all the time. So I find myself sometimes fighting over cars or chasing cars, and so that's another day-to-day struggle. Great question, by the way. John's favorite car, money, no object. That's a loaded question because I don't think I could pick one favorite car. If I had to have the ultimate garage, it would definitely include a Carrera GT. It would definitely include a Lamborghini Mura SV. Obviously, a Diablo, some crazy Diablo variant. A Ferrari F50. I think it's just a magnificent car. It's an open top V12. The engine is truly inspired from the Formula One engines of the early 90s. The car is just ridiculous. I mean, the way it drives, it's just perfect. For a daily, I would say a 05, 06 Ford GT is an incredible car. The Countach, obviously, it would definitely be up there. Ferrari 512 TR, incredible car. It's such an iconic piece of history in Ferrari's lineage, but at the same time, you could drive it. It has power steering, great AC. I love that car. You know, unfortunately, I've never driven a McLaren F1 yet, so I can't tell you that that would be one of the ultimates. You know, maybe I'd switch out the Miura SV for an SVJ. I think if you had to ask me what would be the ultimate, it would be the original Miura Yota prototype that was unfortunately destroyed. What else? Let's see. That's almost a perfect garage. That's almost a perfect garage. F40, I'm in love with the look. I would say I do like driving an F50 better. I think that's about it. I think that's about it, if money was no object. Have you ever crashed or damaged one of the curated cars? Knock on wood, I have not. You know, I really am very careful and try to respect our inventory, even though 90% of our inventory we own. This is not a toy box. These are serious pieces of history, and I think I would feel horrible, God forbid, if something happened to one of the cars. Now, obviously, when we're going to events and shows, or if we're testing a car prior to delivery, yeah, it's very important to use the cars. I try to either ship them to like open roads south in Miami and like Key Biscayne. You know, I think a few times during Pebble Beach weekend, I've driven the cars more than normal. A couple years ago, I took a Murcielago for 200 or 300 miles, Miura SV for a couple hundred miles. So it really depends on the atmosphere. I love Northern California because the roads are much safer. There's less traffic. Miami is a little sort of, it's crazy. I mean, the traffic is nuts. It's hotter than most other atmospheres. So the older cars don't like the climate this hot. They run a little too hot, I believe. So I really don't try to use the cars in Miami too much. And they're pieces of history. I treat this like more of a museum than a true dealership. So God forbid if I scratch the original paint on an SC30 purple metallic car, I would be sick to my stomach. Somebody asked, what is the next 80s and 90s cars that will go up in value? Great question. People ask us all the time, what do you think is the future? What's going to go up in value? And I think that's the wrong way to look at it. I think that to build a collection or think of the future, you have to buy what speaks to your soul. And you have to buy something that you're just really like, wow. You know, something that's interesting, racing history, heritage, and cars that were often misunderstood. I like to find cars like a Jaguar XJ220 or even a Countach, or cars that in period people said, oh, they're too ostentatious, or oh, they're too temperamental, and really sort of understand what the car's place in history. I'm a big believer of the future of the 80s and 90s. I think the future of that generation of cars, if you were 10, 15 years old in 1985, you're probably 40 to 50 today. You're a young guy. You've probably made some money in your life. That's going to be the future of collecting. Between social media, between the amount of really great events now, I look at there's more younger collectors today than ever. And they're going to want the cars of their childhood. They're going to want the cars that, you know, they had the Road and Track magazine, or they had the, I don't know if you guys remember what a Trapper Keeper is, but a Trapper Keeper with a Countach on the front. So I really think that's the future of collecting. I think that the cars of the 80s and 90s will replace the 250 GTOs and the, you know, Ford GT40s of the 50s and 60s in terms of value. But we'll see. I don't have a crystal ball. But again, I really always like to tell people, buy things that are rare, buy things that are unique, buy things that are exciting, and really sort of that speak to your soul. Okay, next question. Is there a purchase you wish you did not make for curated? Man, that's a really good question. I would say that, you know, I'm not a Porsche 911 expert. I don't even try to intend to, you know, pretend that I know a lot about 911s. I love them. I personally had a 993 Turbo, a GT3 RS. I recently drove the new GT2 RS, and I think it's one of the best cars ever made. It's absolutely perfect. But every time we've bought a 911, we've owned it forever. And I think the reason for that is we don't specialize in them. the guys that are looking for 911s aren't calling us. I don't have a book of clients that are like, oh, John, I have to have a paint to sample 993 Turbo. Now, we've done very well with Carrera GTs. We've had, I think 8 or 9 Carrera GTs. I love that car, but it's also something that I know a little bit more about and I understand them more, whereas the 911, I'm sorry, they're perfect cars. They start every time you go to start them. You could drive it every day. They hold their value like a gold Rolex. I mean, they just hold their value really well, but it's not something we know. So every time I buy a 911, I own it for a year. John, I noticed your footwear sometimes. You have an interest in sneakers as well. That's a funny question. I do. I love vintage cars. I'm not a guy that goes like shopping for suits or anything like that, or spend a lot of money on my clothes, but sneakers, no. I have to admit, I have a huge fascination with sneakers. I think the reality for me is that interesting sneakers or limited edition sneakers hold their value, sort of similar to the cars we buy with Curated. And they sort of, I don't know if you notice my outfits, it's jeans, a t-shirt. I don't have to think much about it. so I sort of accent whatever I wear by my interest in sneakers. I love Jordan 1s, the original OG Jordans. I love the Off-Whites. I love the Yeezys, etc. But yes, I'm also a sneakerhead. Great question. What car do you daily? And give us a garage tour of your personal cars. So ironically, I currently have 3 cars. I have the SE30 Yoda, which you guys, I think we did a test drive of that car. I have the Diablo Hot Rod Project, which is in pieces. Now, the SE30 Yoda, I actually can't drive to my house. I live in a condo, and the car is so low, I can't actually make it up the driveway without tearing off the front bumper. The SVR is in pieces, so not driving that. And the family, we have an SUV. So I literally don't have a normal car to drive every day. That will change soon. Maybe once I sell the Diablo SV project, SVR project, maybe I don't know, 996 Turbo, something like that. Maybe an older E55, a 2000, 2001 E55. I think that'd be a perfect daily. But as of right now, I have the most impractical daily drivers imaginable. Do you plan on getting any Zondas in inventory? Great question. I love the Zonda. Wow, they've gotten very, very expensive. We had the opportunity to buy a Zonda last year. I tried to move on it quickly. It didn't come to fruition. We were actually about a month ago looking at another Zonda Roadster. I don't know enough about the legalities of bringing a Zonda into the U.S. and properly importing it. I've learned to be very careful with those things. EPA, DOT, they don't play games. So I don't know if we'll see one in our inventory yet. If we bought one, maybe we'd keep it in Europe, which it could be a possibility. I think they're incredible cars. I think they'll continue to go up in value. It's a piece of art, and Pagani's brand is only grows more and more. How to start in a collection of classic cars with a low budget. Again, buy cars that speak to your soul. I always recommend for people to buy the best of what they can afford. You can never go wrong. You'll never lose money by selling or trying to one day resell a very, very low mileage car. I mean, even super low mileage Porsche Boxsters have appreciated, and even these super low mileage. So I always say, hey, buy the best of whatever you can afford. It doesn't need to be an expensive car. I've mentioned I've been looking at E55s and CL65s, the previous generation cars forever. They're $15,000 to $20,000, so they're not expensive, and I do believe they'll appreciate. They're lower production. They're a sort of a symbol of the first AMG cars. I think Porsche 996 cars are an incredible opportunity. You could get an awesome example, whether it's a Carrera around $30,000 or a Turbo for, let's say, $60,000. And the 996 Turbo has increased in value just in the past couple months. So again, it's not always about buying the most expensive car. You could start collecting, but I do always advise buy the best of what you can afford. What's a sub 10,000 mile ready to go Carrera GT worth with full luggage? Well, this is a sort of a loaded question. It all depends on the service of a Carrera GT. A service could be $30,000. You have to check the clutch, and only the dealer can check the thickness of the clutch. So that could be another $15,000 to $20,000. So, you know, a Carrera GT, when you're inspecting the car, when you're buying the car, there's so many factors. And the luggage alone, if you can still buy the luggage, we bought a luggage set last year for a client. I think it was like $14,000. So the luggage alone's pretty expensive. I see Carrera GTs around 10,000 miles. You know, they trade between 600,000 and let's say 700,000. As they get lower mileage, they go over 700,000, and as they get really low mileage, they get over 800,000. So those cars, I would say their value is all in the mileage, and it's really condition dependent and then color dependent. A black car can bring more, a yellow car can bring crazy money, etc. So, you know, I think you could even say that a paint to sample car could bring 200,000 more than a normal car.